Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Game Shows. I am your host and two-time game show loser, JD Lape. We had a really fun and exciting week of game shows to go through today. Whether you watched Millionaire, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, or The Price is Right, lots of money, lots of big prizes were won and could have been won. We had an $80,000 Porsche on The Price is Right that one of the contestants was playing for on Thursday. On Wednesday, we had the $1 million wedge in play in the bonus round. We had Whiz Kids Week on Millionaire. One of the Whiz Kids ended up winning $250,000. And then we had the second week of this year's Jeopardy Tournament of Champions, which crowned a $250,000 winner itself. So like I said, 4 shows, lots of prize money, lots of prizes that were given out and could have been given out. We're going to go through each of the 4 shows and we'll see how everybody fared. First, we're going to hit the big one, Wheel of Fortune. The $1 million wedge, as you guys know who follow the show, if you land on it during the show, you call a letter. If it's up there, you get to pick up the wedge, and then you have to hold it for the rest of the game. If you hit a bankrupt, you lose it. You have to get to the bonus round where the $100,000 envelope on the bonus wheel is taken out. The $1 million envelope is placed in its place. You spin 1 in 24 shot in getting and landing on it. Then you got to solve the bonus round puzzle, and then hopefully you will win the $1 million. On Wednesday, we had a grandfather-granddaughter team of Frank and Laurel. They were taping it at Walt Disney World in Orlando this week. It was family week. Frank and Laurel landed on that $1 million wedge in the first round. It was like their 4th or 5th spin. Called a letter, got it right. Or called a letter that was on the board, solved the puzzle, so they got to keep the $1 million wedge throughout the game. They didn't land on bankrupt the rest of the game. Managed to win the game with $26,203 and go to the bonus round with that $1 million wedge still intact. Wheel of Fortune has had $3 million winners since they've introduced this about, 5-6 years ago now? Maybe a little bit longer than that. So it's very rare to see a $1 million win. It's rare just to get the $1 million envelope on the wheel anymore. But Frank and Laurel were there. They got to the bonus round. They had their choice of 3 categories of phrase, living thing, or food and drink. They chose to go with food and drink. I like this new kind of twist, I guess for lack of a better word, this season, where the people going to the bonus round get to decide what category they want their bonus round puzzle to be. I think food and drink was a solid choice. They came so close. The answer ended up being baked zucchini, and all they had was the ED in baked and the double C in zucchini and the N at the end. I thought the double C led to zucchini fairly quickly. I know when I was watching it, my mind kept going to fried, even though fried has an R in it, and RSTLNE is part of the original 6 letters that they fill in the puzzle with to begin with before you pick your own letters, and it was not up there, obviously. But sometimes when you get a word in your head and you're like, oh, that looks like fried zucchini, sometimes it's just so hard to get away from that mentally, and that's what happened to me when I was trying to figure it out. I could not for the life of me switch over to baked. And I mean, if that could happen to me at home in my living room with nothing on the line, I could only imagine what Frank and Laurel were thinking of under the bright lights on the big stage. To their credit, Frank got zucchini almost towards the end, the last 2-3 seconds, and right before the buzzer hit, Laurel yelled out fried zucchini. But obviously, like I said, that was incorrect because the R wasn't in there to begin with. It ended up being baked zucchini, as I said. So they did not win the bonus round. And that's when you do not want to see Pat open up the envelope and have it say $1 million. But unfortunately, that's exactly what happened this week. And just last week, we had another contestant, one spike away from landing on the $1 million wedge in the bonus round, and they would have won that. But Wednesday night was kind of a killer. I mean, you can't help but feel for Frank and Laurel and anybody else who's ever had that happen to them on Wheel of Fortune, where you do all this work, you get the $1 million wedge, you get it in there, you end up landing on it, but you can't solve the puzzle. And they were so close too. They still walked home with $26,203 in cash and prizes, which is nothing to sneeze at by any means. But you can't help but feel for them and understand if they are disappointed. You can't help but just sympathize with them on that. Because if it were you or me, Lord knows I would have wanted to win the $1 million too. But like I said, $26,203 in cash and prizes. So congratulations to Frank and Laurel. But man, that is a tough way to make the highlight reel for game shows this week. But hats off to you guys for competing, and it was a great grandfather-granddaughter moment that you guys will have for the rest of your lives. So cherish it as you will. The next game we're going to go over is The Price is Right. We're just going to go over one game. It happened on Thursday. It's very rarely played anymore. It's called The Golden Road. It's rarely played because at the end of The Golden Road is a huge prize worth a lot of money. And as I alluded to earlier, it was an $80,000 plus Porsche that Erica Miller was playing for on Thursday. Now, for those of you who don't watch The Price is Right as much or aren't familiar with the Golden Road game, what it is, there's 4 prizes lined up along the Golden Road across the stage. The first prize in this game on Thursday was a 16-ounce can of pinto beans. The second prize they had was an Xbox One package with 2 controllers and 5 games. Third was a living room set with a couch and a 55-inch 4K LED smart TV. And the fourth and final prize at the end of the Golden Road was that $80,000 Porsche. Now, they give you the general price of that because what the Golden Road is all about, you get the price of the first item, which was the beans in this case. It was 74 cents. So they have a little card. It says 74 cents on it, and you move on to the next item, which they introduced, which was the Xbox gaming package with the 2 controllers and the 5 games. It was blank 63. The price of the Xbox is blank 63, and you have to use one of the numbers from the previous item to fill in the blank. So with the beans being 74 cents, the Xbox package was either $463 or $763. The entire audience was shouting 4, which I did not agree with at the time, just because on the low end, a new Xbox One will probably be $250, $300, and then not to mention you have 5 games, and those new Xbox One games range from $50 to $60, somewhere in that range. So even lowballing it, $50, which I don't think they are anymore. Mostly these were all new games as well, so they're probably $60 a game, and there was 5 of them. So you're looking at $250 to $300 in games alone on top of the console. Which, if you're familiar with that at all, it's going to be in the $250, $350 range, something like that. So you're already over that $400 threshold because your only choices are 4 and 7 to place in that first spot. thanks to the can of beans being 74 cents. Those are your only choices, 7 or 4. The entire audience was yelling 4. I was yelling 7, although that doesn't do me much help or her since I'm not there, and this was taped multiple months ago, but I was still yelling like a maniac at my TV. And Drew pulled up the price, which was $7.63. So unfortunately, her time on the Golden Road was cut very short. She wasn't even able to get to the first item, and she had Erica had no chance of winning that $80,000 Porsche, which is a shame. It was very nice. It was a 3-liter engine, 8-speed manual, rear wheel drive, and park assist. Man. Yeah, I had to slow down there and say rear wheel drive. You try saying that 10 times fast, guys. But Erica got on the prices right. She got to spin the wheel. Unfortunately, she didn't make it past that. She didn't get to go to the showcase. But once again, this week was all about the big money prizes and big money giveaways. Almost had $1 million winner on The Price is Right. Almost had an $80,000 Porsche given away. Or almost had $1 million winner on Wheel of Fortune. $80,000 Porsche on The Price is Right. And we're going to move on to Millionaire with Whiz Kids Week. And Shiva Oswald from Cupertino, California. He's 13 years old, but when he was 11, he ended up taking the SATs and got a perfect score on them. So that just tells you the kind of the caliber of player and person we're dealing with this week on Whiz Kids Week. They were not lying. These kids were absolutely brilliant. A lot of them have so many projects and extracurricular activities that they're doing in their real life or in their lives outside of school and outside of Millionaire too, which is just amazing. With Shiva, he had a great run. With Whiz Kids Week, they're adding a 4th lifeline called Cut the Question, which is similar if you watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for the last 15 years, going all the way back to the days of Meredith Vieira. They had a 4th lifeline called Switch the Question, and this works in the exact same manner. If you don't like the question, you can switch it, or in this case now, you cut the question, and they will replace it for another question at the same value. For this week, for Kids Week, they allow you to cut the question up to and including the $50,000 threshold question. So for the first 10 questions, you're able to cut it if you do not like it. In this case, Shiva did. He used the cut the question on the $7,000 question, which is right past the $5,000 threshold. And it was about a comic book character who won a Pulitzer Prize inside the comic. And the choices were Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne. I will check it right now. I have it. Tony Stark or Bruce Banner. If you're familiar with comic books, as Shiva was not, you would know that Clark Kent was actually a reporter for the Daily Planet in the comic book, and so it would make the most sense for him to win a Pulitzer Prize since Pulitzers are given out for writing. And it was the answer. Clark Kent was, however, Shiva did cut the question, moved on, got it right, went all the way up to the $30,000 question before needing to use his next lifeline, which was the 50-50. And he used it on the question that read, which of the following is not an anagram for the closest planet to the sun, nor subatomic particles the sun creates, nor all of space and time? Your answer choices were Iron Tunes, Sir Venue, Topaz, Ski Car, and Curry Me. Now, there's a lot to deconstruct from this question, and as I've mentioned before in these videos, you need to see the forest for the trees on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. They're going to try and get you confused and have you wrap your head around multiple parts of a question that aren't necessary. Now, this question, all the parts really are necessary because you're looking for the closest planet to the sun, subatomic particles that the sun creates, and all of space and time. Now, like I said, it's a lot to deconstruct. They tell you to take your time and reread the question over and over again. And so that's what any contestant should really do, especially for a question like this. And on top of that, you got to decipher anagrams. So the first things first, you got to figure out what is the closest planet to the sun. That is Mercury. Now, when you're looking at the 4 different answers, it becomes fairly obvious very quickly that answer choice D, curry me, can be rearranged to make the word Mercury. So that was fairly easy to move out, as was all of space and time, which is the universe. And that could be anagrammed into letter choice B, Sir Venue. So B and D were out pretty quickly, which left A and C. And even both myself and Shiva at the time were stuck on both A, Iron Tunes, and C, Topaz Ski Car. So we're looking for subatomic particles that the sun creates, and then you're looking for an anagram of that word. So for a 13-year-old, I'm not sure if I knew what a neutrino was when I was 13 years old. Heck, I'm not even sure if I know what it is now, only thanks to Millionaire. But as I was trying to come up with words that I could anagram Iron Tunes and Topaz Ski Car with, I eventually got to the point where I spelled out neutron with Iron Tunes, which left an I and an S. And then from there I was able to rearrange and get neutrinos out of it. But only after Shiva had used his 50-50, which of course eliminated Sir Venue and Curry Me, so we were all on the same page. The writers left A and C. I was looking at A and C. Shiva was looking at A and C. And only after that had happened did I notice the word neutron, like I said. And eventually that led to neutrinos out of the words Iron Tunes. And to his credit, 13 years old, perfect score on the SATs when he was 11. Shiva figured that out too. He figured out neutrinos, went with C, Topaz Ski Car, since that was not an anagram for either the closest planet, subatomic particles, or all of space and time. He ended up getting the 30,000 and moved on with his 2 remaining lifelines, asked the audience, and his +1, which he didn't even have to use until the $250,000 question. He got the 50,000 threshold, blew past the $100,000 question, got to the $250,000 question, which gave him a little bit of trouble where he had to ask the audience and then call down his +1, his dad, because the audience kind of split their vote. 42% ended up going with what would have been the correct answer. So let me read it out to you. The $250,000 question was certainly a bizarre term. A bezoar, spelled B-E-Z-O-A-R, is another word for what? Is it the end of a sidewalk, a cat's hairball, a wrinkle on a shirt, or a round of applause? Now, I actually knew the answer to this. One of the few times I've been able to just get the answer immediately on an upper level question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And it's really all thanks to Harry Potter. Now, in the first book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I believe it's in potions class, but Snape quizzes Harry. If you read the books, you know the history of that, of those two guys. But he quizzed them about a bezoar, and if I remember correctly, in the books, a bezoar was some kind of stone taken out of a goat's stomach or out of some animal's stomach. That's really the main point that you need to know. And out of the 4 choices that were given to us, the end of a sidewalk, a cat's hairball, a wrinkle on a shirt, or a round of applause, there's only one that's going to be found in an animal's stomach, and that's a cat's hairball. And so that was the answer that I was confident in, that I thought he should have went for. Now, obviously, he did not know the answer to this. That's why he asked the audience. And 42% must have read the Harry Potter books like me, because 42%, which led the pack, said a cat's hairball. Second was a round of applause with 27%, and then the other 2 split the other 30% of the audience. But a cat's hairball had it by a nose, which at that, well, any level, 42% is not confidence boosting at all. So I have no problem with Shiva calling down his pops for his +1. And to his dad's credit, he just told him, I have no idea. He kind of logicked it out, because he said he's had wrinkles on the end of his shirts before. Then he's never heard it called a bezoar. He's never heard a bezoar referred to as the end of a sidewalk or as a round of applause. So he said if he had to guess, he would guess B, a cat's hairball. But he advised his son to walk with the $100,000. But as 13-year-old Shiva said, this is Vegas. Let's go. We're going for it. The kids... oh, man. The kids got some spunk to them. And he ended up going with the audience. Only 42% of them trusted them, went with a cat's hairball. And he won $250,000. I can't even fathom being 13 years old, going on TV, and winning $250,000, which is what he ended up walking with. So congratulations to Shiva this week on winning $250,000 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And that'll bring us to our final game show, Jeopardy, which also crowned a $250,000 champion, this time in the conclusion of the 2-week Tournament of Champions, which pitted Buzzy Cohen against Alan Lynn and Austin Rogers, 3 of the most successful contestants over the last couple of years. It was a fitting final. These guys went back and forth. It was very tough. The scores were relatively low after the first day. Buzzy ended up having no money after the first day. Allen had $8,800 and Austin with $6,500. So you know it was a tough game when no player had 5 figures at the end of the first day. But it is a 2-day total point affair in the finals of a Tournament of Champions. And I'm going to do a breakdown of the entire tournament in a different video. And if you're interested in how the tournament works in that way, we'll explain it all in that video. But for right now, just know that at the end of it, the final 3 players have to play a 2-day final where their totals from each day are added together, and whoever has the most ends up with $250,000. Whoever ends up in second place will walk with $100,000, and third place ends up with $50,000. So whatever happens, these guys are going home very rich men, on top of what they already have won in their regular games. And the second day, well, I'm gonna rewind here. I'm gonna start it off with the opening sequence, because I gotta say, this tournament had the most personality, I think, that we've seen in any set of Jeopardy episodes. Between Buzzy and Austin, and then Alan in the middle of them, playing along. It was just so refreshing, because Jeopardy is a fast-paced game. There's not a lot of time to express personality or who you are necessarily, because you're so focused on the game. Clues come in at a rapid pace. You have 5 seconds to answer. You got to make sure you buzz in before anybody else. The only downtime you get are the commercial breaks and possible daily doubles. But even then, if you're answering the daily double, you got to do calculations. You got to be on top of your game. So a credit to these 3 guys for sneaking in their personalities whenever they could. And so during the opening credits, when they introduced the players, all 3 players did a little Mr. Robot dance that they moved on to the next person as they were being introduced. And finally, in the end, Buzzy pointed over to where Alex was coming out. And to Alex's credit, he came out walking like a robot. It was great. It's so fun to see Alex play along with it also. He could just as easily kind of shut it down and just be like, guys, this is Jeopardy. It's been 34 years. Let's not reinvent the wheel. But no, he played along with it. And I know one of the biggest criticisms that you see a lot on Twitter or social media or whatever, Alex Trebek seems stiff and uppity and whatever word you want to use. But as someone who's been there, who's been in the studio, he's very friendly with the contestants during the taping. He's very friendly with the audience during the commercial breaks. He interacts beautifully with them. And then obviously we got to see during this tournament with all the players, not just the finalists, the interaction between him and the players and the respect they have for each other, and the fact that he can go along and play and be a robot like this. It's actually very entertaining and a nice, and like I said, it was refreshing and a nice change of pace. Awesome to see. The interview portion on the first day kind of got to me, because as I played my games on both Jeopardy and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I wore a pair of suspenders that were my late father's, and so I wore them to honor him because he was my biggest fan. And so it got to me when both Austin and Buzzy gave their stories about their best friend and their mother respectively. Austin's best friend Brian had ended up passing away 2 weeks prior to filming the Tournament of Champions, and before he passed away, or before, I guess he said the first time he went out and played, he went out to LA since Austin's from New York. Brian gave him a check for $5,000, and he said, "Don't worry about it. I know you're good for it," which Austin would have made good on it, since he had won over $400,000 in his initial run, plus whatever he was going to end up making in the Tournament of Champions. But unfortunately, as Austin said, he will not be able to make good on it, since his friend did pass away 2 weeks prior to the taping. And that got me right in the feels, just because I know what it's like to go out there, be in the studio, and have to play with a heavy heart like that. You can't let it affect your game, but you can certainly let their spirit guide you through the way. And hats off to Austin for sharing his story. I appreciate that as not just someone, not just a viewer, but as someone who's also been through that as well, like I just mentioned. So there's lots of us with stories to tell, and heavy hearts and happy hearts and everything in between. So I found it was a very nice gesture and a beautiful story to learn that. And rest in peace to Brian. Very sorry, Austin, that you had lost your best friend so close to that. But I'm sure he would have been very proud of you on how well you did in both your initial run and the Tournament of Champions. With Buzzy, his mom is battling cancer. She wasn't able to come out to the studio to watch him play during the Tournament of Champions. And again, just going back to my dad, he had been battling cancer and passed away before I was able to get on Jeopardy, and he was able to watch me. And so I am very sympathetic to these stories of having friends and family members who are unable to see them fulfill a dream and see their reactions. But we all know that those who love us will be proud of us no matter what, and that's what I believe for Brian and Buzzy's mom. They would feel the same way. So not to get too down, so we're going to bring this back up. just get some quick highlights over the 2 games on some clues that I found interesting or I liked. I really appreciated the 80s love songs category in Double Jeopardy on the first day. One of the it was really funny to see Alex Trebek read off "Never Gonna Give You Up, Never Gonna Let You Down." Obviously they were talking about Rick Astley. As most of you know, if you're watching this, you're on the internet, so you would know about Rick rolling. So that got a bit of a roar out of the audience and a chuckle out of the contestants too, as they had to say who was Rick Astley. In the second game, the one clue that I'm glad that the judges reconsidered their answer over was a picture of what they said was a hero sandwich. Hero, as in hero. That's what they were looking for, where Buzzy gave the answer of ham sandwich, because the category was begins and ends with H, and obviously both hero sandwich and ham sandwich both do that. However, I'm not sure of too many people that actually say hero sandwich instead of just hero, and the clue didn't necessarily exclude the word ham from being a possible answer. So even though he was initially ruled against, he was then given the credit for a correct answer in ham sandwich, which is all. That's one of the great things about Jeopardy, is their willingness to check their answers in the middle of a game, whether it be during a daily double or a commercial break. If there is a question either raised by a contestant or by the judges themselves, they are willing to sit and look through and exhaust all means to see if the contestant's answer could be deemed correct. Now, I've never live seen that happen, but I've heard stories from other contestants that say they've taken 30, 40 minutes to look up a single answer to make sure that the contestant's answer could be deemed correct. And it just shows you the integrity that a show like Jeopardy has, and why it's been on for 34 seasons now, and why it's America's #1 quiz show, and why it's so respected. The integrity of the show is impeccable. To start the second game of the final, Alex came out and declared that this was the most fun ever in any tournament that he's ever had in all the years of Jeopardy. And I gotta admit the same thing as I alluded to earlier. It's been fun to watch, not just these three. These three are getting the bulk of it because they were in the finals and had the most games played in the tournament. And Buzzy and Austin are arguably the 2 biggest personalities they had out of the group of 15. But the entire 2 weeks were so much fun to watch. So many different personalities. They honored Cindy Stoll, who won 6 games last season and unfortunately passed away before her episodes even aired on television. She would have been eligible in this tournament, and have no doubt that she would have kicked some butt and gone very far. They all honored her with these ribbons that every contestant and Alex wore every single game. It was the brainchild, I believe, teachers tournament winner Jason Sterlacki. If I'm wrong, someone go ahead and please tell me in the comment section. I know I have a note. It's somewhere in my notes. I'll double check it, just like Jeopardy. You know what? We'll do that. If Jeopardy's going to show the integrity of looking it up, so will I. Let me look through my notes. Yes, it was Jason. As he mentioned on the Tuesday episode of Week 1 during the quarterfinals. He was the one, it seemed like he was the one who ended up getting the ribbons together and having everyone wear them. And Jeopardy also donated $10,000 in Cindy's honor as well. So a nice gesture on Jeopardy's part. Again, having this tournament, I feel like having it so full of life, just from all the different personalities these last 2 weeks, I think was a very good tribute on top of the ribbons to Cindy. And it goes to show that these contestants are human as well. They're not robots for our entertainment. They're there to make their lives better as well. So I'm appreciating all these stories more and more as I'm getting older. Maybe 16-year-old me would have been just skip through the interview portion, but having gone through it myself, I appreciate what Buzzy Allen and Austin and everybody else in this tournament and every other contestant on any of these shows are going through. And one last thing about their personality, Buzzy Allen and Austin, on the second day during the opening credits, did a see no evil for Austin, a hear no evil for Allen, and a speak no evil for Buzzy. With Alex coming out declaring that it was the most fun that he's ever had in the tournament, and that he's dealing with 3 monkeys today. So that was a nice Alex getting in on the fun is always awesome to see, just because he always is seemingly so stoic, and the straight man for the show to keep the game moving along. So for him to take a minute out of that and enjoy the brevity is nice to see. Ultimately, it came down to 2 Double Jeopardy daily doubles in the second game. The first one was found by Buzzy, who had no money entering the second game of that turn of the finals, but at this point had $10,800 and had a lead over both Allen and Austin in the second game. The category was the body human, and with $10,800 on top of having no money to add from the previous day, Buzzy took a risk and he went for a true daily double. So he risked all $10,800 on what ended up being a video daily double, which showed the hip joint, and they want to know the type of joint that they were showing, and it was a ball and socket joint with the hip bone and the pelvic bone pushed together. And Buzzy ended up getting it correct, doubled his money to $21,600, put him in the driver's seat moving forward. It wasn't over by any means, just because Allen and Austin had money from the day before. So as long as they kept up their pace, Allen had $4,800, Austin had $9,000. They were both in, all three of them would have been in the running for the $250,000. But then we get to the second daily double in the Double Jeopardy round, where Allen ended up risking it all himself. At that point, he had $10,400, so he made a nice jump up from his $4,800 previously. And unfortunately, he could not come up with what is spoonerism for his daily double in the category of eponyms, which caused him to go down to 0. And we left 2 clues on the board at the end of Double Jeopardy, which is, I feel, kind of rare just on the eye test in terms of a Tournament of Champions, but that happened a couple of times during the second week, during the semifinals and finals, after I don't believe it happened in the first week. So that just shows you how difficult the riders ended up making the semifinals and the finals, for good reason, but these are also good players, and they usually rise above and they can get through these boards. Unfortunately for Friday, we did leave 2 clues on the board, but we ended up at the end of Double Jeopardy with Buzzy in the lead with $25,600, Allen only having $1,600, and Austin with $10,200. Now remember, Buzzy had no money from day one. Allen had $8,800 and was in the lead. Austin was $6,500. Those numbers get added to whatever they end up getting at the end of this second day. So wagering is so important in these tournaments, especially the quarterfinals and the finals. The final Jeopardy category to determine it all was state capitals. And for the clue, they wanted to know the state capital that shared its first 4 letters with the last 4 letters of the state that it's the capital of. This was a triple stumper. I was trying to go through all the states as quickly as I could, and maybe about 20 seconds in, it clicked and I got Montpelier, Vermont. But again, it was a very difficult final, as evidenced by a triple stumper between these 3 gentlemen. And because of that, Buzzy had such a big lead in this game that the fact that the other 2 didn't get Final Jeopardy correct led Buzzy to end up winning the tournament with $24,299 to Alan's $9,200 to Austin's $6,700 total for the 2 days, which made Buzzy your $250,000 Tournament of Champions winner for 2017. Congratulations, Buzzy Cohen, on that victory. Alan, $100,000 for coming in second. Austin, $50,000 for coming in third. Like I said, it was one of the most fun tournaments I've seen. Alex alluded to it. All the personalities were great. All the games were great. It was definitely a worthwhile finals with the 3 of you guys. And Buzzy, once again, congratulations. A very worthy champion. $250,000 to you. Well done, sir. And that concludes this week in game shows. A recap of Wheel of Fortune, Price is Right, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and Jeopardy! Once again, I will be doing a separate video going over the entire 2-week Tournament of Champions for Jeopardy! And we'll go more in depth in terms of the wagering of the different rounds, how the tournament is formatted, and go more in depth into the stories of all 15 contestants. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave a comment down below, or you can tweet me at James Dallas Lape, or you can tweet the show at This Week Game Shows. That's at THISWK Game Shows. Thank you for all the support in watching this video and listening to this podcast. I appreciate it very much, and we will see you next week.